Hello, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. I don't know what time it is that you might be watching this, but welcome to the Diagnosis Podcast. My name is Abigail Hep, and I think before we jump into things and, about the title, about the whole topic of this video, I think I should give you just a little bit of background, a little bit of information. So obviously, I told you, my name is Abigail, but most people call me Abby, so, feel free to call me that too. And I am a rising senior at a high school in San Diego. And I honestly started this podcast because I wanted an outlet for my passions. And, honestly, I have always thought having some sort of like college passion project is cool and something to show my college that I'm doing things to prepare for what I want to major in. So I'm sure you can guess from the title of this video and the name of my channel that this is going to be pretty medical related because as a rising senior, I've started thinking about what do I want to do in college. And excuse me, um I have for a long time struggled and just not really had a clear, direct vision or like path of what I wanted to do. But the more I thought about it and my personality traits, what I'm interested, what I could see myself doing in the long run, I want to go into the medical field. I don't know if that means nursing, if that means, like specifically like pediatrics, radiology, if I wanted to go and try and get my doctorate. I'm not quite sure. But I do hope to figure that out in the near future. But as college applications began to approach and I'm touring colleges, I wanted to get a head start on this and put my best foot forward and, dip my toe into the medical field, if you will. Now, today I wanted to talk about in particular in part in part my gosh, in particular, I just forgot how to say that word. So sorry. I wanted to talk about women's health. And, as a woman, this is a pretty important topic for me. I feel like uh, health is such a big part of everyday life, our entire lives. It's part of just the human experience because everybody has a body, everybody gets sick, everybody this, that, and the other thing. Health is all around us. And for women being 50%, making up 50% of the population, I think actually technically it's like 51%, but we make up half of the population. There is such a lack of medical research. There is such a lack of just women's health in general, and just like we're lacking in knowledge. And as someone who is going to grow up and continue to likely have, different health developments in the future, it would be nice to know that I'm going to be well taken care of, that, even though I want to become part of the medical field, it'd be nice to know that my care providers know as much as they do about my biology as most healthcare providers know about the male biology and, you know, male health. So that's why I kind of wanted to, dive into that topic of research because I consume a lot of media. I, hear a lot from my peers, from women in my life, and it has been made aware to me that, and, just like even in my history classes, it has been made aware to me that, women are just predominantly, thought of as less or as inadequate, unequal, like the list goes on. We are just so under researched. And that just kind of got me thinking, well, one, like, why is that? Two, what can we like do about it? And, you know, obviously it's important, but like, why is it so important? What in the world right now that's relevant is making the lack of research important? So I did some research and, I just wanted to kind of like debrief to, go over whatever I wrote down and just kind of expand on it and, state my opinion, state the facts, and hopefully raise conversation to make just hopefully everybody more aware because that is so incredibly important. Okay, so starting off with the first topic, why do we know so little about women's health? And this is going to be from an article by AAMC News by Bridget Balch. And I'm so sorry if I did not say your last name correctly. I'm positive she will not be watching this video, but I'm sorry if I butchered your last name. Anyhow, why do we know so little about women's health? It's honestly just due to what first comes to mind. It's a lot about just gender stereotypes and women, just like throughout history, have been left out of clinical studies. And, this can be due to a number of reasons. It's kind of just like a historical thing that has been repeating itself, but it's also, there's a lot of other factors. It can be due to the fact that women's medical research is much more expensive. I think, this is largely because it's so understudied. Like, it has just been predominantly counted out, so leading it to be more expensive because it's already been disregarded. So, because it's so expensive, that can lead many medical researchers to just disregard or avoid it, which proves to be an issue. And even as recent as 2013, which is only that's 13 years ago. So that, I was pretty young then, but for, most adults, that was not that long ago. Just to put it in perspective. So, even as recent as 2013, a study found that women were 29% more likely to experience implant failures or issues due to inadequate testing for implants in women's anatomy. Now, obviously, this is a pretty specific thing. Not every woman is going to have to get an implant at some point in their life, but I think this is just a great example of how, something that can truly change someone's life, possibly save their life, give them the ability to walk, to live a more normal life. Like, just for a woman, just to like receive that, you know, health care, that is like a human need and a human right, because it's under researched, they're just going to be set back, and there's really nothing they can do about it because it's less researched than implants are for men. And that's just the way it is. So, you can see how this is just inherently unfair. And up until 1999, it was assumed women and men experienced the same effects of heart disease, and it was only during this year, which I think I have that a little different because I'm sure this article was written not in this current year. But anyhow, it was only recently that there were discovered differences. And I feel like that is honestly kind of crazy. Like, I'm sorry to use just kind of like blunt language, but that is kind of just insane. That it was only until, the like 27 years ago, only 27 years ago, was it realized that women's health and men's health varied, that there were differences, that they were just assumed to be completely one and the same because through all of that history, all before 1999, there was no research done that was able to prove otherwise. It was just assumed. And, to further this, as I kind of stated before, women make up 51% of the world's population, yet were issued by policy to be excluded from clinical studies until it was revised in 1986. So even though the differences were discovered in only though it was discovered in 1999 for heart differences, it was just policy that it was the same, that women's health didn't need to be a part of clinical studies until 1986, which is only 3 years before the Cold War ended. Like, that is, it might seem like so far away, you know. I feel like with a lot of history, we kind of just think about it as long, long ago. And this is kind of off topic, but I know for a lot of the time when I was like sitting in history class and learning about like the civil rights movement, thinking about that, you see it in black and white, and it's like the women's rights movement, like the LGBTQ plus movement, like all of those kinds of things felt like so far away, that had already been changed, that had already been like fixed, that was long ago in history, but it was just simply not that far away. Like, it is wild to think that things that are so normalized and just a part of daily life in this modern time, that it was drastically different not that long ago. And I feel like women's health, like as I was saying, which is a human right, was not normalized, and that it was incredibly different not that long ago. Okay. And this next article, which I will be sharing information from, is by NCBI Bookshelf or the National Library of Medicine. So I just wanted to kind of, I'm just talking at the camera about, well, this is unfair, this is different, this is, unjust that we're not treated the same. And, I feel like sometimes people can see it through a lens of just basic morality, of just, the morals that we have. Everyone should be created equal, but there is also a chance, people don't think that way. So I just wanted to kind of delve into the importance of women's medical research and resources, and why we should care about why it's currently not equal. So, you know, this is kind of a basic fact, I feel like, and I've already stated this, but women make up half of the population, and it's hopefully pretty widely known that, women are solely responsible for, obviously not all of the conceiving process, but half of it. But that's like a difference of 3 seconds to like 9 months, and then multiple years postpartum of like carrying that child, birthing that child, dealing with the consequences of the after effects and everything that comes with childbirth, and just carrying a child in general. And that can also be paired with caring for other members of the family, already existing children. Obviously, as a 16-year-old, I have not been through a pregnancy. I have not been through birth. I have not been through the time of postpartum. I will never, well, not never, but as of right now, I will never be able to understand what exactly that experience entails and how that feels. But I think it is important to remember that it is a life altering experience, and it can often just be disregarded as a woman's duty, or, it's just a part of their life. This is what they just have to go through because it's what's expected of a lot of women, to have a child, to create a family, to add to the population, when really it is a body altering, a hormone changing, it can change your entire brain chemistry just by having a child. And, sometimes a lot of these women are often unpaid while caring for the child, that and so forth. Anyhow, nursing, medicine, hospitals, and education facilities are all predominantly made up of women. Yet the nurses and doctors themselves are not equipped with all possible information on biologically female patients due to the lack of research and studies, which that's kind of as I was saying before. Even though I myself want to go into the medical field, it is slightly unnerving to think about the fact that my future nurse, my future doctor, doesn't know everything there is to know about my body, the way it works, what it might need. And while that is not in any way to discredit the knowledge and, insane schooling and years of medical work, that is not to disregard any of that and say that doctors know nothing about women, because that is simply untrue. It is more to the point that they don't know everything there is to know, and not even because they are not trying to learn, but just because there is a lack of research. There is just a lack of knowledge in medical research about women. And differences were not highlighted, and instead research was generalized to assume that whatever was true for male research was equated to women. This is proven to be harmful in the example of cardiovascular disease. So, um, cardiovascular disease, a recent study showed that women were less likely to experience chest pain, while chest were less likely to experience the chest pain men are affected with, and instead show symptoms of shortness of breath, nausea, and pain between shoulder blades when experiencing a heart attack. So, just in this one example, cardiovascular disease, which honestly I don't know how common it is, and just how harmful it can be, but I'm assuming, there's such a large population, millions, if not billions, are likely affected with this disease. And to think that it was only until recent studies that it was seen that there are differences in how it affects the different genders. And, you know, because this research is so recent, it could mean that multiple women who were affected with this disease were likely not being given the treatment they needed. And, this could result in a lifetime of sickness, a lifetime of just being in constant pain because you're not getting the proper prescriptions, the proper procedures, just because it was found that these symptoms don't match up with what the ideal, not the ideal, but what the idea of cardiovascular disease is, because it was solely based off of men's symptoms. And everyday pharmaceutical medicine and drugs can be harmful to women because many drugs were originally tested solely on male participants and were deemed safe and effective. And this was, again, solely specific to males. And because women are not present in these clinical studies testing if these drugs are safe, if these drugs are effective for women, because it was just based off of the research of men, because men were present in the clinical studies, in the research, to show that these drugs are, FDA approved, or they're safe, they're shown to be effective in treating this disease. And that is taken as the generalization, causing more harm than good, which is what, you know, a prescription is supposed to do, because it's not being applied to women in the research and just being given out as okay. And a specific example of this is depression medication, because due to this generalization, um, it resulted in 23% pregnancy-related deaths for pregnant women who took depression medication, because the depression medication was, again, generalized towards men. They deemed it as fit, as safe, as, the proper prescription. it ended up harming women and, you know, causing death to themselves, to their pregnancies. And again, that is just a whole life altering event when it is just supposed to be a basic human right of healthcare. It ends up doing more harm than good because it is specific to one gender when it should be equal. Okay. And then the final topic that I just wanted to, further touch on. I know I've already kind of spoken about how this generalization, how the lack of research can be harmful, but there is unfortunately even more information on why it is harmful, on why it is dangerous, why it is, possibly fatal. So this article is by Maureen Salomon from Harvard Health. So, in this article, she kind of, touched on a lot of how this can be changed, kind of just like speaking up for yourself when you're at a hospital, for advocating for yourself more. And, you might wonder, well, why do I need to advocate for myself? Shouldn't my doctor just listen to me? Shouldn't my doctor just hear my symptoms and say, okay, I'm going to get you the help you need? Well, unfortunately for women, I'm sure a lot of men are pretty unfamiliar with this because they don't have to go through this gender related almost discrimination. Now, this article touches on how in a PNAS analytical study, it was revealed that women wait on average 30 minutes longer in hospitals to be seen by men and are often unable to receive necessary medication for the same issues men report to their doctors about. So it's kind of an inherent issue. It's something that has just been passed down, that it's already just embedded in people's minds, in society's minds, that sometimes women are just, whatever they're saying, it's just not akin to reality, that they are kind of dramatizing it or dramatizing it. And I'll get into that more. So, this is, like I said, inherent. It's kind of embedded, and it's even in the words we use today. So, a really interesting fact that I found in this article is that the word hysterical originates from the Greek word hysteria, which means womb in English. This shows the underlying prejudice towards women and the inherent suggestion that a woman's pain is nothing but hysteria. Now, obviously, this is just my notes. That might be a little bit of, like I said, uh, a little bit more fluffed up, but I do think it's relevant. It's interesting, and it speaks volumes on how society is just already geared towards a male centered, and you know it's just a society already kind of geared towards the superiority of men, the inequality of women, the just idea that women are inherently less, or not necessarily inadequate, but that they will always just fall short of a man because that is just the way things are. And like I said, it's embedded in our language, in how everything works. Although there has been, significant changes, significant progress in the the women's rights movement and feminism, there's still just the history of our world bleeding through and just seeping through the cracks and making it into our subconscious mind. Often, I even find myself having thoughts or saying things that make me think that is just putting myself down in, even if it's just in an underlying way, it's putting myself down, my gender down, just through the thoughts that I've picked up from society, from the patriarchy, you know? Anyhow, that was a bit of a tangent, but this does reflect how women's pain is often minimized because of the idea that women are just dramatizing it. And I've heard a lot of horror stories, and honestly, I can't pick up one in particular. And how much of it can you trust? Some of it I've seen just on TikTok, on in TikTok comments, but I honestly do feel like it is just women reaching out, trying to find that community to see if other women are experiencing it. And you can say what you will about people lying on the internet for attention, but when it comes down to it, maybe I'm biased, but I like to believe what a woman is saying. And sometimes maybe I'm gullible, but I will always trust a woman's word more than a man's word. And I would like to believe that when women are sharing these stories of not being heard out in the doctor's office, or just, feeling like they're going crazy because everybody else is making them feel crazy, they're just speaking in experience and how they truly feel, and that they're speaking on it because it feels unfair. And even in this particular article, I remember reading about how a woman was experiencing pain after, I believe she was experiencing a migraine after intercourse, and she went to the doctor, and it was written off as just uh like a symptom of having intercourse and like the after effects. But the pain continued for, I think it was days or maybe even weeks. And so of course she goes back to the hospital. She's in such pain, she wants to try and seek an answer. It feels like more than just after effects or consequences. And after a scan, it revealed that there was like an issue in her brain. I don't think it was a tumor, but there was some sort of issue in her brain, something that was not supposed to be there, and she was rushed to surgery. And it could have been fatal if she had not reached back out and found the issue sooner. And I feel like that is a prime example of how real and how relevant the situation is, that it is not being made up, that women are not going to the doctor to lie just like for fun, that when they're experiencing pain is because they are experiencing pain and want to find an answer and want to find a solution. And in the same PNAS study, it was found that when a patient is asked to rate their pain on a scale from 1 to 10, nurses are 10% less likely to record the women's level of pain. And obviously, for nurses, there is no pain-o-meter, so they have to go kind of based off of just what the patient is saying. They can't hook them up to a scanner, theoretically, and just feel exactly what the patient is feeling. And I feel like this, social issue, as I was saying, of women just feeling unheard in the doctors, can often lead to this being a problem because nurses and doctors can't, perform some sort of telepathy to figure out exactly what and how the patient is feeling. Women are just too nervous to speak up because for fear of just being undermined and it being written off as hysteria, or you're being dramatic. Are you close to your period? Like, are you sure you're not just PMSing? Like, that these are likely real questions or real thoughts that doctors are having that causes them to say, it's probably not that big of a deal. She's probably just like playing it up. And I hate to use such kind of blunt language, but this can be the real experience that women are having day to day. It could be happening, it could have happened today, but will likely happen tomorrow. And this is not to say that every single doctor is automatically prejudiced and automatically just doesn't believe um, what women are saying. But as these studies are showing, it's an actual thing that is happening. And this kind of just reminds me, I think of a moment in specific, um, of the Figs, which is a company that sells scrubs, so like a nurse's outfit, like nurse equipment, and they made an ad campaign for, I think it was like women wear figs, and about the importance of having women in all types of jobs and positions in the medical field, whether that be an OBGYN, a pediatrician, a surgeon, a dentist, a veterinarian, all of those things. It is important that women are in those fields. And I remember a moment in particular, it was just kind of like a POV of a woman in the doctor's office expressing her issues, and the male doctor is just writing her off like, you're probably just on your period. And I can't recall the exact words, but it was a similar situation to what I was just, talking about. And it like flashes to a female doctor, and she goes, I hear you. I understand your symptoms. We are going to get you the care and help you need. And I feel like this speaks volumes to this issue that, if these multi-million-dollar companies are picking up on these issues, these Harvard studies are picking up on these issues, then it should be something that we are actively working towards a solution to. And this is never in conversation to ever put down men or say that men need to be shamed, they need to be put and talked about less. But it is a historical issue that men are just favored in pretty much all aspects of life and health. So there needs to be a change. And it is not a change of let's put women in the number one spot. They need to be all priority over men. It just needs to be equal. It needs to be that women are getting just as much care as men. Honestly, in this case, if not more, women experience a completely different life because every aspect of our body is different. Like, women get cellulite. Men don't get that because our skin cells are like a completely different like pattern. So like men don't experience the same body, the same changes. Like, obviously, we all go through puberty, but it's completely different types of changes, which, you would think is obvious, but based on this research and based on the relevancy of this issue, there's clearly not enough differentiation because it's often just written off for women. And because women make up the entire population, not in the sense that the population is all women, but every single person you see walking around on this earth is because of a woman, because she carried them for 9 months, went through the horribly painful and life changing birth and postpartum and raising that child. So it honestly just makes no sense to me why women do not have the resources, the research to ensure that every single step of their life, whenever there is a health problem or just a health concern, that it is being heard, that it is being voiced properly. Because, like I had said, women, there's a large chance that women are scared to even bring it up for fear of not being properly heard out and listened to. So, all that to say, this is a not a rising issue, but I think it is one that should be brought to more, not only women's, but just people's attention, that it could save lives. It could ensure that whatever implant, whatever medication is going to be safe and effective to solve the issue that a woman is having, that a girl is having. That I know personally that some acne medications work completely different for the boys I know and for the girls I know, that it has affected me personally different than other boys that I know who are on the same medication. And I would like that to change. And obviously, I am no medical researcher. I am not in a place where I can currently research things. So sorry for the interruption. This is my cat. Her name is Billy. Um, anyhow, I'm not in a place to fix this issue. If I could, I most certainly would. But I do think that there are things we can do to just advocate for ourselves, to speak up, to say, I am actually in pain. I need you to listen to me and to get me the help that I need, because it could save your life, it could save someone else's life just by using our voices. Okay, so I do apologize if there were any bumps in the road, if the microphone quality is not great. Honestly, this was a pretty cheap microphone off of Amazon. I'm fully aware of that. But, it is just a college passion project. I don't think I'm in the market to spend $100 on a professional microphone, but I will work with the resources I have. I'm sorry if there were any word mishaps, any. I'm honestly blanking. My vocabulary is seeming to run dry. I'm pretty new to being in front of a camera, but I just hope that this went as smoothly as possible, that maybe you learned something new, that maybe you have a new affinity for women's health, and that maybe you will become more passionate about advocating for the things that you want to change. Um, I just hope you enjoyed in general, and if you like what you heard, if you're interested in health too, and possibly uh, going after a career in the medical field, then I invite you to follow along and to continue on with me on this journey of podcasting that I have never taken before. And, maybe maybe subscribe. That'd be pretty cool. And, maybe I'll see you in the next video. I'm not too sure what the topic will be, but if you have suggestions, please let me know and I will be happy to look into them. And I just thank you again for listening if you made it all the way to the end of the video. I really appreciate that too. And I just hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, or night. And I invite you to stay curious, to stay healthy, to stay educated, and to create your own diagnosis of whatever is troubling you or whatever you're interested in, and to, put your best foot forward and start researching for your own if you're not getting the information to satisfy you. That was a super long outro, but I just wanted to thank you again. And this is the Diagnosis Podcast. Goodbye.